We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
You don't have a Nessie beer.
I don't know if there is a Nessie beer.
There probably is. Are we recording?
Probably,
We should be.
Yeah, we're recording.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, welcome to the show.
We're off to a great start. I'm just gonna... Nessie beer?
Yeah, is there a Nessie?
Gray's Lake Nessie from Confluence Brewing Company. Yeah, I mean, are we going?
Okay.
There we go.
Sure, we're going.
Great.
Okay, we started.
Awesome. This is Slaying Monsters. I am Matt, here with EJ.
Yo.
Yo. And we're going to start here by talking about the surgeon's photograph. EJ, what do you know about the surgeon's photograph?
I know that it is a thing that was done at some point in Scotland.
In Scotland?
Scotland.
Yeah, there's a good number of Scottish phrases in here that I'm gonna just nail. I'm gonna nail them.
You're gonna be really good at it.
Perfect accuracy.
I'm not even gonna try. I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, I apologize to any Scottish listeners that we may have
Absolutely.
that actually know how to pronounce the words that I do not know how to pronounce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what else do you know?
It's a photograph of a monster in a lake.
It is. It is. In fact, I would say it's one of the most famous, if not the most famous photographs, not only of a lake monster, but one of the most famous photographs in the entire history of cryptozoology and unexplained phenomena. I'd go so far as to say that it's possibly the most famous photograph, at least fake photographs, in the history of the entire medium.
Fake photograph.
Fake photograph.
Interesting.
A little bit of backstory.
Here we go, pissing people off already.
Oh,
All
yeah,
right,
here we go.
Do a good start.
Well, this is established. This is
Okay.
established
All right.
as a fake. Now, it is interesting because there's still a holdout group of true believers that will say, yeah, but it was a deathbed confession, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it wasn't really fake. But multiple sources have come out and talked about how it was done, that the photograph is fake. And we'll talk a little bit about the people who did fake it and what their reasonings and motives were. On April 21st, 1934, the Daily Mail published a photograph that appeared to show the head, neck, and part of the body of an unknown creature rising out of Loch Ness in Scotland. This photograph would become the most famous example of the Loch Ness Monster, and indeed of any lake or water monster in history. It's been republished in almost any book, newspaper article, internet website, or anything else about the mysterious creature that supposedly lives in the lake.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is it the most famous because it was a good photograph, or is it the most famous because it was the first photograph?
That's a great question, and we will talk about that.
Okay.
But in brief, it was not the first photograph, but it was the first clear photograph. So
Okay.
before this, there was a grainy photograph that kind of is really, really debatable what it showed. And there was actually a piece of video footage that I think was lost. I haven't been able to actually find something that definitively says this was the video that was shot, but this was really the second photograph of the Loch Ness Monster, and just so happened to be crystal clear, perfect, and stuck in people's minds for a reason that we will ultimately also discuss.
Cool.
Cool?
Yeah, that satisfies me for now.
Right.
Continue.
Great. Again, total fraud. Total fake. Hoax. Completely fabricated. We're going to talk about the hoax. We're going to talk about the process of making it. We're going to talk about the hoaxer and his motives and the inspiration behind the picture that, in my opinion, defined a generation of monster hunters. This, alongside the Patterson-Gimlin Bigfoot film and the still from that, it's sort of the genesis of modern day cryptozoology. Before we start, let's acknowledge the sources that I use for this. I'll be using Daniel Loxton and Donald R. Prothero's book, Abominable Science, Origins of the Yeti, Nessie and Other Famous Cryptids, and Hunting Monsters, Cryptozoology and the Reality Behind the Myth by Darren Naish, as well as a PBS essay entitled The Legend of the Loch Ness Monster, written by Stephen Lyons from January 1999. I worked very hard to get my hands on the now infamous book Nessie, the Surgeon's Photograph by David Martin and Alistair Boyd, who we'll be talking about a little later. But I wasn't able to get a really good copy myself. It's out of print and iffy to find. But the three sources I've mentioned have done a really good job of breaking down the Martin and Boyd findings, I think. So any discussion of Loch Ness, the Loch Ness Monster, has to start with the lake itself. So that's where we will start on the geological stuff as well. What do you know about the geology of Highland, Scotland, and the lakes therein?
Oh, shit. I know nothing. Let's see. Wait a minute. I'm going to guess, though. I'm going to guess.
Shoot.
Because I am from upstate New York, where there are glacial deposits. So everywhere in my dumb eyes, I think, oh, everything's glacial deposits. So I'm going to make this up. I'm going to say after Pangea, all the islands did their island thing. They went off and did the thing.
The island thing.
They did their thing. And then this big fucking rock came down and sliced through the land and created this big lake. And that also created the mountains. And that is how you got Loch Ness.
And that is how babies are made. No, I mean, I wasn't going to talk specifically about the history, but we can touch on the history. It is a glacial lake. It was created by glacial movement.
See, I was right. Everything is glacial. Everything's glacial movement.
So it's situated southwest of Inverness, Scotland. It is in the Highlands, and it's a huge lake. It's a big lake. So it's really hard to conceptualize how big it is. It's 23 miles long. That's 37 kilometers. Okay? Which means basically nothing, right? To you, just in intellectual thinking about it. Its depth at the deepest point is 755 feet.
Damn.
230 meters. Okay? That's not consistent across the entire lake, but that is the deepest point. So the deepest point is so deep that if you took Big Ben, the clock tower, not Ben Roethlisberger, but the clock tower, and you stacked two of them on top of each other in the deepest point of the loch, there's still 125 feet above that until you hit the surface of the loch.
Cool. This is unsatisfactory to me until you can tell me how many Ben Roethlisbergers it would be from the bottom into the top.
I mean, I can do that math.
You don't have to do it right now, but I need you to do it for me later.
Hang on. No, we can do this. Ben Roethlisberger height.
Okay.
We can figure this out. 6'5", okay? So 755 feet divided by 6.5 feet. Wait, no. 755 feet divided by 6 feet, right? Six and a half feet.
Yeah, that's how you do math, yeah.
You could stack 116 Ben Roethlisbergers on top of each other. in the deepest part of the loch. That would be feet on head.
And I'm just picturing them not in the deepest part of the loch, also stacked up and just
a tower.
That'd be way more interesting than the Nessie photograph. I'm sorry.
Here in Philly, by the way, if we took the Sierra Center, you drop that in the deepest point of the lake, there's still 20 feet of water covering it.
Oh, wow.
Skyscrapers. I'm talking about skyscrapers here, the deepest part. It's not all that deep. The average depth is 430 feet, which is still enough to cover Big Ben, the clock tower, with room to spare almost anywhere in the loch. And just using our previous system, that would be 66 Ben Roethlisbergers stacked on top of each other.
Excellent. Thank you. I was going to ask. Appreciate that. I know everybody wants to know, so.
Well, I mean, hey, the question's been raised.
It has.
I'm sure Ben Roethlisberger is curious. Is out there thinking, I wonder if I stood on my own shoulders.
I'm sure it's a burning question for him.
Probably all of his life.
Yep, all of his life. Now he knows.
All this means that the volume of the loch is immense. It's the largest volume of fresh water in all of Great Britain. entirety of Great Britain, the largest volume of fresh water. In fact, it contains more water than all of the lakes in England and Wales combined.
Damn.
Yeah.
I can see how people would think there would be a cryptid in there.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's huge. So it's 23 miles long. It's only like a mile wide. So you can always see the other side of the shore. But just that length, that depth. And then the other thing about it, this lake, and also really all of the lakes in the Scottish Highlands, lochs, I should say, lochs.
Say it right.
It's the low visibility as well. It's the inky blackness that the water has, caused from runoff of the surrounding soil, which is mostly peat. So the peat gets drained into the loch, and you end up with water that's like the color of a cup of tea, like a tan brown, right? So, of course, you can't see very far once you're in the water. And that's another factor that leads to, all right, so we have this massive lake here, loch, and you look into the water, and, you know, sometimes you're on a stream or a lake or something, and you look down and you can see the fish swimming around. You can't. You can't see, you can be in the lake and hold your hand in front of your face and might not even be able to see your hand. It's so inky and dark and hard to see.
Yeah, I remember actually Josh Gates, he did a thing on the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
I don't know what show it was anymore because he's done like a few shows. But I remember now they couldn't see anything in there.
It must be really freaky and disorienting if you're like a diver or even just swimming, you know, because here in the northeast of the U.S., like most of our lakes, rivers and stuff are pretty, the visibility is pretty good. Like you can look, you can see maybe not the bottom if they're super deep, but like if you're swimming, you can open your eyes and see stuff. And there you just can't. It must be really freaky. And I can't imagine being a scuba diver down there, swimming around and then looking around and being like, I don't even know which way is up, right?
Yeah.
You have to follow the air bubbles that lead to the surface.
Right. It must be very disorienting down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can understand how people could look at this loch and say anything can be down there. Super weird, right? Mm-hmm. So given the size and depth of the loch, it's 124 fathoms. I can't. Which
sounds fancy.
Really fucking deep. That's what I'm saying. It's really fucking deep. Given the almost opaque water conditions, it's no surprise that these legends grew, right? Mm-hmm. There's a really rich history of water monsters in Scottish folklore, even apart from Loch Ness, but just talking about the other lakes, the rivers, and the coast. There's the boobry, which is like a big loon that ate anything that would come in its particular loch or lake.
Like, is that fake or real?
Oh no, these are all folklore. These are fake monsters. So
okay.
The boobry is not real. Honestly, if I had to guess, the boobry was probably a crane or something like that.
Okay.
There was all right, here we go. Ready?
Uh-oh.
Be a sad bullock.
God damn it.
Nailed it. Be a sad. No, it's not sad. It's Biasid. Biasid bullock.
Oh, perfect. Okay, now I know what you're talking about. Before I had no idea.
Before you're like, what the hell is that? No, that makes perfect sense. What is it, EJ?
Oh God, said Borlaug. It's
Scottish folklore.
Yeah, it's a giant sentient ice cream cone.
Yes, giant sentient ice cream.
Yes, and it has a tail, and it actually has a penchant for knitting. It just knits all day long. That's all it does.
And what flavor ice cream?
Oh, lobster.
Lobster?
Mm-hmm.
Ew.
I don't know.
I had lobster ice cream once. It was disgusting.
Look, I did not make this thing up. Okay. You just blame the Scottish for
Established Scottish folklore.
Yeah.
I think if anything, it would be haggis flavored ice cream.
Ooh. Gross. Yes.
Gross. No, I'm not going to try to pronounce it again, but whatever that thing is, it's almost more like a ghost, actually. It's either a one-legged man or a big greyhound, depending on who you talk to.
Very different things.
And probably how much they had been drinking.
Yes.
But either way, the thing that's consistent is that it howls at night and it attacks anyone who disturbs it.
Okay, well, I would also attack anything that disturbed me at night.
Well, yeah, especially if you're a giant sentient ice cream cone.
Yes.
And then there's also the incident at Stronsay in 1808, where the corpse of a supposed sea serpent washed up on the shores of the island. So Stronsay is one of the Orkney Islands off the northern tip of Scotland.
Good Scotch there.
Excellent Scotch.
That's the jam. That's the shit right there.
Yeah, that's the
Is it peaty or
yeah, what do they call that? The I can't remember the name of it. Islay. Yeah, the Islay Scotch. It's really good Scotch.
That is the perfect Scotch.
Yeah. I mean, they were probably drinking plenty of Islay Scotch on the Stronsay Island at that time because while it was a relatively populated island, there were around 1,000 people on a 13 square mile island. It was a really important location in the kelp and herring industry. So you're talking about, 1808, island full of fishers just living there with their families, probably drinking a lot of scotch.
With the best scotch in the world.
With the best scotch in the world. And basically nothing else to do. I think that life was probably either really dull or really terrifying.
I don't know. It sounds kind of perfect to me. Because I just want to leave society and drink all day. So that sounds like ideal.
Well, Stronsay Island.
I need to go there.
There you go.
I need to go somewhere where there's no people.
The only thing about, well, there were a lot of people, though. There were 1,000 people there.
Well, I'd scare them off with a cryptid.
I mean, maybe that's what happened.
Maybe.
No, they're actually, so a corpse washed on the shore of the island. Lots of people there to see this thing. They dubbed it the Beast. It came ashore September of 1808 after a storm. At first, it was identified as a, quote, sea snake with a mane like a horse. Measured 55 feet long and 4 feet wide with a circumference of 10 feet. So the big, massive creature, right? It had an elongated neck, a tiny head, and 3 appendages that looked like wings. Or, fins, if you're at all versed with real sea creatures. It had bristles running down its back like a horse's mane. And of course, it's got the people of Stronsay really excited. Well, because life on a fishing island... Yeah, and
is perfect in every way.
That wasn't what I was. But we can go with that. Life on a little fishing island, perfect in every way. But even so, there'd been a storm, nasty storm. Thing washes up on shore, and everybody comes out and starts looking at it and saying, "What the heck is that thing?"
What do you think it is, or do you think it's like completely fake story?
Oh, are you asking me what I think it is?
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you.
Oh my God.
Just patience.
I ask the best questions.
The better question is, what do you think it is?
Oh, well, first I was like, it's a horse.
Okay.
It's a horse that got washed up in the storm.
Interesting. It did have the bristles like a horse's mane, but remember that it had fins.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have horse hooves that would decay like that.
I know, that kind of threw me off.
Also, it was 55 feet long, so it's a big horse.
It can't be a horse.
Yeah.
Maybe some kind of freshwater eel.
Interesting. So it's pretty clear in the light of modern science and history that it was a decaying basking shark.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, at the time, a Scottish naturalist came to the island. His name was Patrick Neal, and he declared it a new species, Halcydrus pontapondii.
Nice.
Pontapondani. Definitely.
Good job.
It was, in fact, a basking shark, probably half eaten by seagulls. This was positively confirmed by a surgeon named, for some reason, Everland Home, who examined the skull and some vertebrae later on. What's, I think, most fascinating about this story is that the eyewitness descriptions were wildly inaccurate. So they described soft fur where there was probably gristle, or they called the fins paws, right? Or wings or something like that. In fact, these inaccuracies in the witness reports, where people could actually look at the thing, like touch it, smell it. I'm sure it smelled great. It was just on the land. They were walking around. They were inspecting it. They were touching it. They were doing all of these things and still getting so many things wrong. This gets pointed to as an example of how misleading witness testimony can be.
Yeah, so like you're saying that everybody saw something different.
Not necessarily everybody saw something different, but the way that they remembered it, the way that they reported it.
Oh, was inaccurate to what was actually lying there.
Yeah, was inaccurate to what it was. Because it all got filtered through maybe their memory, maybe just how they interpreted the things. I think the thing that I really stick on is the report that calls them wings. And these were fishing people, They were out there doing their herring fishing and stuff like that. They were on boats. They knew about dolphins. They knew about sharks, all of these things. And they still looked at it and said, oh, that's weird. That's probably a sea serpent.
Yeah, that's what's weird because it's not the first time they've seen something wash up.
Exactly.
Probably
right?
not the first time they've seen a shark like that.
Probably not. Yeah, but it was enough to throw them off and say, oh, this is something we've never seen. And let's have the scientists come in. Let's name it a new thing. Let's do all of this investigation into what it could possibly be because we're so baffled.
Well, yeah, and I think there's something to be said also for like the group excitement and how like if it was just like one person coming across this thing, I think eventually if you were a reasonable person you would say, oh well, it kind of looks like a wing, but upon further inspection it's something else. It's just a shark and I'm just going to walk away and leave it alone. But then I think that you bring in more and more people and it becomes more and more fantastical and the excited energy gets people's imaginations rolling. And like you said, like then they take that home and maybe they discuss what each other saw and they come up with a story that's so different and far from what's actually lying there.
Exactly.
So it's sensationalism and it's also that poor witness testimony that you just can't rely on.
And then you have the other situation in this where gulls were coming in and eating the corpse, and it was decaying on the shore and all of that. So you come back and it might not look the same. I mean, think about how fast you can see seagulls eat crabs, like horseshoe crabs or something like that, as they come ashore and then they just get torn apart and devoured. It wouldn't take very long for that thing to suddenly look very different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, like, your mom once found something weird in the field. It was like a weird decaying raccoon thing. But it had, like, a weird beak.
Yeah. Well, do you know about the Montauk Monster?
Oh, maybe that's what I'm looking at. Maybe that's what I'm remembering.
I mean, my mom might have totally found a raccoon in the field and would absolutely have sent us a picture of a raccoon
definitely
corpse.
Sent us a raccoon corpse that was decaying in the field. Yes. but I'm thinking of the Montauk Monster with the beak. Yes. But she sent us something too that was like weird. It did not look. It didn't look like a cow. It didn't look like a raccoon or anything. It had decayed in a way that made it look like almost like a chimera. Yeah. And I remember we were thinking, and then of course we were like, okay, well, it's obviously something that was decaying funky in a weird way. Right. But I don't know, sensationalize it. It could be the next great cryptid chimera thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's not to get too far off topic, but that's one of the chupacabra reports all the time. That you see all these like desiccated dogs that are feral, already underfed, and then they die, they decay a little bit, and somebody says, oh, look at this is some strange creature that we've never seen before.
Yeah, and like mange plays a big role in altering. Yeah,
plays a huge role. When we do an episode on Montauk, we'll talk about the Montauk Monster. It's not actually related to Montauk and the whole, like, government conspiracy, underground base, blah, 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 blah. But it's kind of a fascinating little sideline into, like, just the weird shit that happens at Montauk and how everybody kind of points to that and being like, oh, well, this was probably an experiment that got loose or something like that. But it was actually a raccoon. It's just dead raccoon.
Sorry, everybody.
But it is funny how that raccoon like looks like it has a beak. That corpse looks like it has a beak because of the way the raccoon teeth are laid out and the jawbones. Yes. This actually leads us perfectly into the basking shark. We'll talk a little bit about why the basking shark looked the way it did. Sharks don't have bones, right? They have cartilage, like our nose and our ears.
Okay.
This baffles you. No, they don't have bones.
Okay. Well, I know now. I thought you were about to say, "Gotcha, psych." They do have bones.
No,
the look on your face. I was like,
no,
okay.
they don't have bones.
Okay, I believe you.
Yeah.
But see, some fish have bones.
Fish do have bones.
Okay.
And I think this is part of the reason why the Stronsay beast was so confusing, right? Because if you have a fish come ashore and rot, you get the fish skeleton, the head, all of that stuff. But sharks, you don't. Decaying sharks, they're different than like a salmon, right? The jaw of the shark probably fell off, and then you just are left with a long spine, right? With this tiny little skull attached to it without a lower jaw. You assume that tiny little skull is the entire skull, right? And then it looks like a snake's head instead of a shark's head.
Yes.
Right? Because it's just straight spine all the way.
Yes.
So
makes perfect sense.
Exactly, right? When we talk about sea serpents, it's likely that reports of them didn't actually come from oversized eels or sea snakes or something like that. It's far more likely that the notion of sea serpents actually originated from the decaying cartilage skeletons of sharks.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's because they're cartilage.
Exactly. And they don't do what you think they should. And I don't know in 1808 if the people on that island would have had enough biological knowledge. Like, I know they would have seen sharks and they might have killed sharks, but I'm not sure they would have had enough knowledge to say, oh, the shark doesn't have bones. Maybe they would, but how many decaying sharks do you see in a year or 5 or 10? You know, there's not that many sharks around, right?
Maybe there were a ton back then. I just assumed that there were lots more of things than now because we've killed everything off.
Well, I mean...
Not to get depressing.
I don't know. I don't think you would have killed off the basking sharks, though. If anything, they just went further north and they're now all around the, Arctic instead of where they were because everything's migrating.
Right.
Like the damn crabs, the snow crabs that just aren't going to be around anymore.
God, I don't know. I'm okay. I can't speak intelligently. I don't know if they're migrating or if they died. All I know is that they're trying to find them.
Yeah, my suspicion is that it's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And to be clear, because I looked into this a little bit, it's not that they don't know where the crabs are. Like, oh my God, we misplaced 1 billion crabs. What possibly happened to them? Like, they didn't just up and vanish.
Alien abduction, obviously.
Oh my God, don't even.
I am sorry.
Can you imagine?
God, I know.
The aliens came down because the aliens want crab legs.
Look, they do. They're delicious. They're like, I could take you stupid humans, but you know what, though? Those no crabs.
Well, they did all the cattle mutilations. They were doing cattle mutilations. They were eating red meat for so long. They're like, I'm kind of sick of this. Don't we have any seafood?
I bet at this point an alien filet mignon is like top quality.
Like an alien made filet mignon or a filet mignon that comes from an alien being?
Oh no, an alien made filet mignon.
Oh, well, probably
because they've been doing it for so long.
I would hope so.
And now they're like, oh, we're done with this. Now we're gonna get into seafood.
The alien Bobby Flay.
Sorry, you were talking about where they went.
What was I talking about?
You were talking about where the crabs went.
So it's not that the crabs are missing. It's that the population is in decline.
That's very depressing.
Yeah, it's much more depressing.
That makes me want to cry.
Yeah, they didn't miss them. They're just like, oh, there should be 1 billion more. Mm-hmm. There are not. We have to figure out, are they migrating? Are they, did they die off? Did they do this?
Right.
But,
well, it's not like we've had decades and decades of warnings and knowing that this was going to happen.
And the funny thing is, the crabbing industry has been saying this for a long time. They've been saying this for like 30 years. Oh, we're starting to see a decline. We're starting to see a decline. And I guess 1 billion was the magic number that they were like, okay, whoa, pump the brakes. 200 million, no, that's fine. If we can't find 200 million, that doesn't matter. But 1 billion, whoa, that's untenable.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Disgusting, right?
Yeah, really sad.
Yeah. So back to our decaying sharks.
Yeah, let's bring it back up again.
Bring it. Yeah. Let's talk about dead sharks. Do you know about the Japanese fishing trawler that hook the basking shark?
No.
We'll talk about this at some point, but this is a very famous photograph of a Japanese fishing trawler caught a decaying basking shark corpse, and you see it suspended in air, and it looks exactly like what you think a dead sea serpent plesiosaur would look like.
Wow.
Like, if plesiosaurs existed, that's one of them. But it's not. It's just a basking shark.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Let's bring it back to folklore for a second.
All right.
All right. So one of the things that you thought of for this creature on the shore was a horse, a 55-foot long horse
Giant horse.
with wings.
Yes. Why not?
That's just the Jersey Devil, 55-foot horse with wings.
Yeah.
Nothing holds as prominent a place in Scottish folklore tradition as the Kelpie. What do you know about the Kelpie?
Okay. The Kelpie is... Okay, so I don't know a lot about the Kelpie, but I think that in my little knowledge, it's similar to the Selkie, maybe?
Okay, tell me about the Selkie then.
Okay, so not an expert on the Selkie, but when I was a kid, I watched a movie called The Secret of Roan Inish, and it's an awesome movie. It's a great soundtrack. Killer soundtrack. Okay, so the seals, how do I even sum this up? Okay. So
It's
like
a documentary, I assume.
Yeah, it really happened. It's true thing. It's a film. Wonderful. So this woman is a Selkie. This guy steals her she morphs into a seal.
Her pelt.
So he steals her pelt while she's in human form. He steals her seal pelt. This is very disgusting. And this keeps her with him. It keeps her bound to him. And throughout the story, the story is that she gets her pelt back, and then she returns to sea. They leave out the fact that I think in folklore, Selkies attack sailors. They lure them and they kill them. I think that's true.
Well, it's true of the folklore, I think.
Yes.
It's interesting because like Selkies, Kelpies, and mermaids or merfolk all share this same kind of mythology around them, right? I think about The Little Mermaid and the whole thing about like getting her legs and she could walk on land and then she wanted her fishtail back and all of that stuff is sort of like the gentler version of that. That's not so much like, oh, you're enslaved to me forever. You're not that far off base with that description. It's a little bit different. So the Selkie, I believe, is Irish.
Oh yeah.
Part of Irish folklore.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Kelpie, Scottish folklore. They're nasty. They're malevolent, shape-shifting water monsters. They can take human form. Okay, just like you take off your pelt and you have human form, but their pelts aren't removable though. So they are just shapeshifters. They can choose to change their appearance. While they can be in human form, more often they're seen as aquatic horses. They lived in lochs and they were harbingers of death, disaster, usually like drowning or shipwrecks. In their horse form, Kelpies often graze beside a loch, looking all tame and inviting to the Scottish children because, you're a Scottish child, you want to run up to the horse and jump on its back because I guess that's what you do to horses in Scottish Highlands.
What else are you going to do?
I mean, there's a horse there. Why wouldn't you jump on it?
Right.
For real, right?
Yeah.
But if you do, and you jump, the horse you jump on is not a horse, but is a Kelpie, they will race into the water and they'll drown you, and then they'll eat your waterlogged corpse.
Wow. Okay. So I'm just going to say, I think this probably originated by something that truly happened to some kid. Like, it's not that crazy to believe.
Well, it is, they're like those stories that you would tell your children, keep away from the water, right? Beware the water, beware all of that. Yeah. Also, I have a note here that the Kelpie doesn't eat your entrails. Your entrails float back to the surface.
Oh, that's nice.
So it eats all of your, I guess, skin, and then leaves all the guts to float up, and that's how they can identify your corpse.
Okay, with the guts.
Like,
Interesting.
Like, oh, that's Timothy's intestines for sure.
Yeah, I've seen those before. Man, Timothy with his intestines, always bragging about his intestines.
Ew.
But also, like, don't run up on a freaking horse. Like,
Well,
also,
yeah,
it's a good life lesson. Also,
Yeah,
you know.
like just in general, right?
Yeah.
I mean, any animal. Maybe don't jump on the back of any animal.
Yeah.
I'm not
exactly.
sure there is an animal. I can't think of an animal that you could just mount and ride.
Grizzly bear.
Really? We watched oh my god, my brain automatically went to The Departed, but there aren't any grizzly bears in The Departed. What the hell's the
Depends
name
on
of
what you're smoking.
What the hell's the name of the Leonardo DiCaprio
Oh, The
movie?
Revenant.
The Revenant.
Not
The
The
Revenant. It
Departed.
was the something.
I want to
Yeah.
see those movies combined.
Oh my god.
Yes.
Oh my god. No, absolutely, right? Right?
Yes.
And then what you do is you make a new version of each one, where the bear is the connecting factor, and so the bear comes in with his like Boston accent.
Ooh, instead of Mark Wahlberg, it's a grizzly bear.
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
Love it. A lot of legends of the Kelpie share similarities with other folkloric monsters, like we talked about the mermaids, the Selkies, vampires too. Kelpie, interestingly enough, you can kill a Kelpie with a silver bullet, just like you can a vampire or a werewolf. Also, Kelpies' favorite pastime was disguising themselves as an attractive young man and seducing single women who they would take back to their watery lair for, and I quote, the entirely unromantic object of eating her.
Okay. I feel like they were covering their bases there.
In case, just to distance themselves from the romantic eating that could happen.
there is a romantic eating that could happen, so I think they're just being very clear.
Yes, this was the unromantic eating.
Right. Okay, good to know.
It was said that if you got a horse bridle around the Kelpie's head, you could control it. This would be kind of like getting the Selkie's pelt, right? And so there's also a legend of enslaved Kelpies turning the water wheels of mills at night. And if they ever broke free, they would destroy the mill in vengeance.
That's sad.
For the Kelpies or
Yes,
for the water
for
mill?
the Kelpies.
Oh, because they're enslaved.
Yes.
What I can't figure out is they say that they turn the water wheel, but the water wheel is only half under the water. So in my head, there's a Kelpie that's like on the bottom that just then gets caught up and travels over the top of the water wheel and then plunges back down. Because I can't figure out how else you would turn the water wheel.
Well, there'd have to be two Kelpies on it, right? So
Right.
like one, because you have to have a counterweight, and
Right.
so
But there's still one like going up head over heels each time, right?
yeah, there is,
Yeah.
and like that's a terrible situation.
It seems like a very ineffective way to run your water wheel, actually.
Yeah. Also, like I think if you dam it right, you can create a current so that the water wheel turns on its own.
Yeah.
So like you don't need, right? Like isn't that how water power works? You use the current.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like you don't need a Kelpie to turn that wheel.
It seems like it would be very impractical to need to capture a Kelpie every time you needed to turn your water wheel.
Yeah, I mean you could probably have your unlikable cousin do it or something like that, or your
Come here, Donnie.
yeah. Come here.
Turn the damn wheel. Oh, we lost the Kelpie
I
again.
feel like in
Make Donnie do it.
In my head is Donnie Wahlberg. Because
Oh my
we were
God.
just talking about Mark Wahlberg.
The Wahlberg's all over this episode.
I know.
All of this is to say that there was already a very broad tapestry of aquatic folklore before Nessie came into the picture. And honestly, the stories of a serpentine creature stalking around the loch fit right in with tales of water horses and the boobry and the one that I'm not going to try to pronounce again. But they really came to the forefront in 1933 with a bizarre sighting of an aquatic monster in the loch that set the region on fire. Now, throughout the 1920s and the 1930s, Scotland had been working on improving a scenic byway. That's the A82, which ran from Glasgow to Inverness. Okay, so that's essentially like all along a huge section of the country, and it runs along the scenic Loch Lomond and offers views of the various Scottish landmarks, including the meeting of three waters in Glencoe, which is the setting used as the Gorge of Eternal Peril in Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh.
You remember the answer me these questions 3, and then they get thrown into the gorge?
Yes.
Yeah, it happened in Scotland.
Oh, they filmed like on location.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really cool.
I mean, I think it's less on location for them than it is for us.
Yeah, that's true. Because they're England, probably.
Yeah, they're in the UK. And, of course, the A82, before terminating in Inverness, it travels along the entire northwestern side of the Loch Ness and offers just all these stunning views of the water. So on April 13th, 1933, Aldi McKay and her husband, John, were traveling the A82, and she saw something absolutely incredible in the loch, at least according to the article published in the Inverness Courier. A friend of McKay's and a part-time journalist, Alex Campbell, published this article. I'm not going to do a Scottish accent because I'm concerned that I'm just going to sound like Mel Gibson in Braveheart the whole time.
Did he even do an accent?
He did like a vague accent.
Okay.
One of my favorite lines from that entire movie is, "You dropped your rock."
Is that him, though? Or is that somebody else?
That's him.
Oh, is that him?
Yeah, that's him, because the big guy, they're having the rock throwing contest.
Oh, okay.
And he walks up and he drops the rock in front of Mel Gibson. And he says, "You dropped your rock."
Oh, okay. Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, let's not do that.
All right. So this is the article from the Inverness Courier, 1933. Loch Ness has for generations been credited with being the home of a fearsome-looking monster, but somehow or other, the water kelpie, as this legendary creature is called, has always been regarded as a myth, if not a joke. Now, however, comes the news that the beast has been seen once more, for on Friday of last week, a well-known businessman who lives in Inverness and his wife, a university graduate, when motoring along the north shore of the loch, were startled to see a tremendous upheaval on the loch, which previously had been calm as the proverbial mill pond. Apparently a mill pond was a calm thing. I don't actually know what a mill pond is, but they were apparently very calm.
Yes, and proverbially so.
The lady was the first to notice the disturbance, which occurred fully 3/4 of a mile from the shore, and it was her sudden cries to stop that drew her husband's attention to the water. There, the creature disported itself, rolling and plunging for fully a minute, its body resembling that of a whale, and the water cascading and churning like a simmering cauldron. I just love the flowery language that they had in newspapers back then.
Great.
Soon, however, it disappeared in a boiling mass of foam. Both onlookers confessed that there was something uncanny about the whole thing, for they realized that here was no ordinary denizen of the depths, because, apart from its enormous size, the beast, in taking the final plunge, sent out waves that were big enough to have been caused by a passing steamer.
Okay.
Okay.
It doesn't sound like it's a good description of the surgeon's photograph.
Very true. That's very correct. And it's interesting that you say that, right? This news report is critically important to the Loch Ness phenomenon for 2 reasons. Number 1, this is the first time someone refers to a monster, specifically in Loch Ness, using that word, monster. First time in print at all. Meaning that this is probably the first time the phrase, even though the phrase Loch Ness Monster is not in this article, it's probably the first time that those words, monster and Loch Ness, have been printed together in history, in all of history. The second important factor here is that Campbell, the journalist, equates the monster specifically with a kelpie or water horse. These are the shapeshifters that we talked about before, right? He says, a fearsome-looking monster, but somehow or other, the water kelpie, as this legendary creature is called. So, while this is the first time we have a reference to the Loch Ness Monster as a specific entity, it's still being lumped in with the older folklore of kelpies. This is highly significant because it means that, at least in the spring of 1933, anything unusual in the loch, in any of the lochs, not necessarily Ness, but in any Scottish lake, was still treated as a kelpie, not a long-necked dinosaur.
So it's going to take something else to start to turn it into a dinosaur. Basically.
Precisely. Later that year, Aldi was interviewed by Rupert Gould, a retired lieutenant commander in the British Royal Navy, for Gould's book, The Loch Ness Monster and Others. The others in question being sea serpents. In this interview, she clarified that at first she thought she saw 2 ducks fighting before realizing that the commotion was too extensive. She explained that she saw 2 humps about 25 feet apart, which would be consistent with a pod of jumping seals. Because the way seals, as they travel through the water, remember that seals travel in pods, multiple seals all at once, and they'll jump in like an arc and sort of jump all the way down the line.
Like a serpent.
Exactly.
Are there seals in Ness?
There are.
Okay.
Yeah, there are harbor seals.
Aw.
Yeah.
I love harbor seals.
I know. They're super cute.
They're so cute.
But you can you've seen harbor seals, right?
All my life, yes.
You can see how, all your life?
All my life, even like, in random places.
I see them right now.
I see them right now.
But no, you can see how, like, they're dark, they're shiny, and they're not real high out of the water. And if you see 3 of them at once, you may very well be like, oh, that's a single thing, right? Especially if they're traveling in the same direction. I mean, we'll probably talk about them a lot as we talk about water monsters and things like that, because they're responsible for at least some of the Loch Ness Monster phenomena. The waters of Loch Ness were calm for several months before the next publication in the Inverness Courier. A terrifying letter from a man who claimed to see Nessie up close, in broad daylight, and in the last place you'd expect for a water monster.
Okay, I'm going to say...
Yes.
The last place you'd expect for a water monster, but it was still Scotland, and...
Yeah, it was right on the, in the area of Loch Ness.
In the area of Loch Ness. Okay, I'm going to say that it was at the library taking out a book. Dan Brown taking out
Dan Brown.
Da Vinci Code.
Da Vinci Code?
That's my guess.
You're wrong.
Final guess.
You're wrong. It was Angels and Demons, because it was starting at the beginning of Dan Brown's series.
Is that the first book? Not the Da Vinci Code?
No, Da Vinci Code's the second book.
Oh, okay.
Angels and Demons is the first.
Oh, so it was taking out angels. God,
no one knows.
Damn it.
No one knows.
Man. All right.
On July 22nd, 1933. Now, this first incident was April. This is July. July 22nd, 1933. George Spicer and his wife were traveling along the southeastern side of the loch, heading along the Doris to Foyers Road. Those are 2 places. Doris is one place, Foyers is the other. This road runs along the bank of the loch, connects the beach to some of the area's landmarks, including the Fall of Foyers, which is a waterfall on the River Foyers just south of Loch Ness. At some point along this 23-mile journey, the couple saw a creature cross the road in front of their car and disappear into the loch. In an article published in the Inverness Courier, he explains, I saw the nearest approach to a dragon or prehistoric animal that I have ever seen in my life. It crossed the road about 50 yards ahead and appeared to be carrying a small lamb or animal of some kind.
Oh, wow.
Remember this detail.
Okay.
That'll come into play later. It had something in its mouth.
Interesting.
Right?
So it was big enough to have like a lamb thing.
Like a lamb in its mouth.
That's big.
That's a gigantic animal, right?
Yeah.
If you take the previous sighting, the Aldi McKay sighting, she saw seals, or at least she thought it was ducks, right? So her sighting wasn't that big, and then all of a sudden you have this guy talking about, like, I saw something obviously gigantic, right?
Yeah.
He goes on to say, it seemed to have a long neck which moved up and down in the manner of a scenic railway, and the body was fairly big, with a high back. But if there were any feet, they must have been of the webbed kind. And as for a tail, I cannot say, as it moved too rapidly, and when we got to the spot it had previously disappeared into the loch.
Okay, so I don't know of any scenic rail trains that have heads that move up and down.
I think what he means by that is that it sort of snaked. I think that's what he means.
Okay.
I'm very baffled by that. I think if you're looking at a map and you look at a scenic rail, it's not in a straight line, and that's what he was saying.
Okay.
And he just didn't know how to say it in a way that normal people would understand. I mean,
Okay, fair. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Again, we're kind of translating 1930s Scottish phrasing
Right.
into 2022 vernacular, right?
Yeah. I also don't know of many webbed creatures that can run quickly over land. I mean, I guess, what do we know that's webbed that runs really fast on land? I guess there are some.
Komodo dragon.
Okay.
Komodo dragon will be one, but the Komodo dragon, even that is not big enough to have a lamb in its mouth unless it's a tiny little lamb.
Yeah, or if it's an ambitious Komodo dragon.
Well, I guess so.
Yeah.
Komodo dragons are fucking scary.
Apparently.
I saw one at the Field Museum in Chicago. They're goddamn terrifying. They're big and they're nasty. Like, I would not want to be anywhere near a Komodo dragon.
Big as a Komodo dragon.
Like 6 feet,
Holy
something
shit.
like that.
Could it have been somebody's escaped Komodo dragon pet?
I mean, possibly. I'm gonna say no. Yeah, I'm just gonna go out there and say no. But I think Komodo dragons do have webbed feet. Specifically, he does say if there were any feet, they must have been of the webbed kind. I'm not sure. He seems to be drawing quite a conclusion there because
He
it seems
didn't
like
see feet.
he doesn't see the feet, but he's like, oh, if they would be webbed. It makes me think back to the fins again from the Loch Ness Monster, right? Not fins, but they were wings, right? You're just kind of making up these details that you might not necessarily have seen.
Yeah,
right?
and like maybe he's like, he's putting it together. Like, okay, so it's headed toward a lake, so obviously it's going to have webbed feet.
Right.
Makes sense.
I guess.
Yeah.
George Spicer's report is a critical report because for the first time here, we see a deviation from the more traditional Kelpie sightings, and instead we're faced with a new creature. It's got a long neck, it's got a big body, right? Big enough that it's holding a lamb. It's got a high back, so the back rises, probably curves, and possibly webbed feet, although Spicer claims he didn't see any limbs. He also doesn't know if it has a tail or not. It's also the first time that the media specifically used the moniker Loch Ness Monster. The article's headline is this the Loch Ness Monster? So that long neck and webbed feet give rise to a new theory regarding the monster. And that's, what is that? What do you think?
That it's a plesiosaur.
That it's a plesiosaur.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding. I think that's the first one you've gotten right.
I liked my ice cream idea. I don't know. That's pretty accurate.
Right. Well, ice cream and the library you were correct about.
Right. I was half right about that.
The plesiosaur hypothesis is what we call this. Seemingly ignoring the fact that Spicer described the monster as walking across the road, this new hypothesis claimed that the monster was in fact a surviving aquatic dinosaur living undiscovered in the loch. This theory was probably postulated by Rupert Gold, the Navy officer turned monster hunter, and as far as I can tell was based exclusively around the neck that Spicer described. Admittedly, at the time, paleontology was still a developing field and prehistoric behavior sciences had a long way to go.
Yeah.
Now, plesiosaurs were actually well known at the time, at least among educated circles. First named in 1821, although the original fossils were found 2 centuries earlier. The plesiosaur, or near lizard, was a marine reptile living in the Triassic period, somewhere around 203 million years ago, all the way through the Cretaceous period, and finally dying out about 66 million years ago. They could live in fresh and salt water, so oceans and also possibly the loch. All over the world. Fossils have been found everywhere. They breathed air, not water. And they probably ate mollusks and squid. Delicious.
They have good taste.
And they were massive. Anywhere between 5 and 50 feet, or 1.5 to 15 meters. So on average, you'd think they were probably about the size of a sailboat. Like the hull of a sailboat.
They're between 5 feet and 55 feet?
5 to 50, yeah.
So they're either my size or they're the size of a boat.
Yes.
That's a huge difference.
Well,
Are the my size the baby ones?
well, yeah.
Okay. Just wondering.
Okay.
I don't know if they have like some that are teeny weeny.
There were different species that grew to different sizes. because there's a difference. So I'm kind of lumping in I believe it's the Elasmosaurus as well as the Plesiosaur, because they did as well. I don't remember if Plesiosaur, I believe the Elasmosaur is a type of Plesiosaur, and Plesiosaur is the like larger definition of what this long-necked sea creature was. You know, if it wasn't for the glaring 66 million 1900 year gap, this might be a viable hypothesis. I mean, if the loch was a home to an air-breathing creature, it would make sense that the monster would breach the surface to breathe like a whale, right? Except that instead of a blowhole that you see on a whale, you would actually see the animal's whole head. The hunting behavior could explain the surface activity that people have seen. And since they spent most of their time in water, then you probably wouldn't find any corpses. There's a number of problems, anatomical and historical, with the plesiosaur hypothesis, which we're not going to get into here because it's a whole mess. Hopefully I'll be able to talk about them in a future episode. For now, we're going to head back to Loch Ness just in time for the first photographic evidence of the monster. Okay. And that, I believe, is where we'll pick up next time.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I'm also full of questions like, well, when was the Loch Ness formed? Obviously after the Triassic period, because that'd be insane.
Yes.
I don't think it works that way.
Right.
So, like, to me, that alone sort of tells me that there could not be a plesiosaur in that lake, because I just, unless they crawled out somewhere with nobody freaking noticing.
Well, yeah, it's this mistaken concept that, like, I guess the whole Earth was underwater, and then the water level dropped, I guess,
and left everybody in a puddle.
And yeah, you know, I mean, well, that is how lakes form.
Yeah.
Right. But you're right that the glacial movement happened long after the dinosaurs were dead. Mm-hmm. So it's impossible that there could be a dinosaur in Loch Ness, because right. the lake didn't even exist. The lake was actually just a crater at the time that plesiosaurs were swimming around. There wouldn't have been anything in there because it was dry.
Yeah.
It only has the water because of the glacial movement. Melting glaciers.
Or I guess it could have been, do you think it could have been underwater at the same time, though? Do you think it could have been, or do you know it was like
Loch Ness?
Yeah, that area of Scotland.
Loch Ness was not underwater during the Cretaceous period.
Oh,
no.
Okay. Oh, mm-hmm. Wow. Okay.
No, it's a newer lake than that.
Oh, okay.
This has really just mostly been the history thus far. It's important to understand the history in order to contextualize all of the things that are going to come after. We have to talk about the Kelpie. We have to talk about the folklore.
Yeah.
In order to really understand the origins of the creature and the photograph that's going to come.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Got to get that sweet context.
Sweet context. Sweet context.
Yes.
Yeah. The most important thing to remember from this episode, what do you think it is?
That cryptids do not have library cards.
Oh, I mean, I guess that's an important thing to remember.
Oh, I got one. I know one. Matt cannot pronounce Scottish words.
Oh, we all knew that.
Okay.
No. Most important thing to remember: the monster crossed the road in front of George Spicer with a lamb in its mouth.
Okay, cool.
Therefore, we know that the monster was coming from a Greek restaurant.
Ooh. Also, good taste. These monsters have excellent taste.
Yeah, a little mint lamb, you know, rack of lamb. Good stuff.
It's pretty good. Oh, no, we should say goodbye.
We should say goodbye.
Goodbye until next time.
Goodbye until next time.
Goodbye until next time. That's all.
Great. That was a fantastic sign-off.
I just want to say
goodbye. I'll miss you. Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters. If you like the podcast and what we do, please share it with others or leave us a rating and review. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on Instagram @slayingmonsterspodcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.